When you deal with a narcissist, you're not dealing with a person in the way you think. You're engaging with a psychological machine, one built on fear, shame, and the desperate need for control. Most people will tell you that narcissists are just arrogant or cruel. They won't tell you the deeper truth. Narcissists are terrified. Terrified of losing control. Terrified of being irrelevant. Terrified of you waking up. In this video, you'll learn the 4 moves that break the narcissist's hold over you. Moves they cannot handle no matter how hard they fight. You'll learn why setting a boundary isn't just protection, it's a psychological revolution. Why pulling back your emotions doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Why explaining yourself is the trap they need you to walk into, and how your silence becomes your greatest weapon. And why letting them collapse under the weight of their own illusions isn't cruelty, it's survival. Marcus Aurelius said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Today, you stop fighting their chaos and start reclaiming your strength. If you're ready to break the cycle, if you're ready to choose yourself without apology, this video will show you exactly how.
Let's begin. 1. Set boundaries and mean them. When you set a boundary with a narcissist, you're not just drawing a line, you're breaking a contract they never asked you to sign, but always expected you to follow. One built on silence, control, and your willingness to stay small. To them, boundaries aren't just inconvenient, they're offensive, even dangerous. Because a boundary says, you don't own this space anymore, and that strikes at the core of who they pretend to be. See, a narcissist doesn't crave connection. They crave control, validation, power. They use guilt to bend you, shame to silence you, and manipulation to keep you in orbit. It's never about closeness, it's about leverage. But the moment you say no, the moment you refuse to play along, their structure starts to crack. Their false self, the carefully constructed illusion, relies on your submission to stay alive. Your resistance doesn't just challenge them, it destabilizes them. You won't hear this from most people, but narcissists don't fear rejection, they fear irrelevance. They fear no longer being able to shape your emotions, twist your empathy, or dictate who you're allowed to be. When you stop bending, they panic. Not because you've hurt them, but because you've stopped feeding the illusion that they matter more than you. Let's go deeper. What looks like confidence is often just armor. What sounds like certainty is often rehearsed. Their need to dominate is a mask for the terror of being seen for who they truly are. Fragile, insecure, emotionally hollow. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Narcissists flip this wisdom. They make their pain your responsibility. They demand you adjust to their fragility, not confront your own truth. And the moment you stop adjusting, everything shifts. One of the clearest examples of this in the real world was when Oprah Winfrey famously walked away from a toxic family relationship. For years, she carried the burden of trying to heal the wounds of people who continued to hurt her. But there came a day when she drew a boundary, not out of hate, but out of survival. She realized that loyalty to dysfunction wasn't love, it was self-betrayal. In one interview, she said, "You have to be responsible for the energy you allow into your life." That boundary wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was final. And it protected everything she would go on to build. They might retaliate, rage, guilt trips, silent treatment, or they might play nice, feigned growth, pretend they understand. But none of it is about connection. It's about reclaiming control. Because your boundary threatens to dismantle the unspoken agreement, you stay small so I can feel big. But here's the truth. Holding that boundary will feel wrong at first, especially if you've been conditioned to equate peace with compliance. If you were raised to think kind means available, or if saying no makes you cruel, that belief is the very weakness they exploit. This is where the Stoics show us another path. Epictetus asked, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" A boundary isn't an act of aggression, it's an act of self-respect. A moral line that says, "I won't betray myself to make you comfortable." And if they respond with rage, guilt, or retreat, that's not proof you've done something wrong. That's confirmation that your boundary is working. So here's your line. I will not explain my boundaries to someone who benefits from breaking them. I will not shrink to make someone else feel large. I will not apologize for protecting my peace, because real love doesn't punish boundaries. It honors them. And if they can't, you walk. No explanation, no performance. Just stillness and the quiet power of someone who's done being controlled. But setting a boundary is only the beginning. If you really want to dismantle their control, you have to take back the one thing they can't survive without: your emotional energy. Let's talk about emotional disengagement and why it's the move that narcissists fear the most. To emotional disengagement, setting a boundary is the first crack in the narcissist's illusion. But emotional disengagement? That's where the real collapse begins. Narcissists survive on emotional energy, yours. They don't just want attention, they need it. Rage, tears, explanations, every emotional reaction you give them is fuel. It's proof that they still have access to your inner world. Even your anger says, "You still matter to me." And that is the only reality they care about preserving. This is why silence hits harder than any argument ever could. Emotional disengagement isn't passive. It's active resistance. It's stepping off the stage while they're still desperate for an audience. You won't hear this from most people, but a narcissist would rather be hated than ignored. Negative attention is still attention. They feed on it. But indifference, stillness, that's death to their ego. Let's go deeper. Seneca taught, "He who angers you conquers you." Every time you react, defend, or plead, you give them a foothold in your mind. You allow them to dictate your emotional state. But when you disengage, when you choose not to play the game, you reclaim your mind and your freedom. Consider Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years imprisoned, stripped of everything except his ability to control one thing: his internal state. When he walked out of prison, he didn't carry his captors with him emotionally. He didn't seek vengeance. He chose peace, mastery over the self. That's the power emotional disengagement gives you, not just over narcissists, but over anyone who tries to enslave your spirit. But here's the truth few people will tell you. Disengaging doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels like betrayal, like coldness, especially if you were raised to believe that love means endless explanation, endless emotional labor. If you're an empath, walking away without fixing it feels wrong. You think, maybe if I explain just once more, they'll understand. They won't. A narcissist doesn't listen to understand. They listen to find weaknesses, to scan for ways back into your emotional world. And when you refuse to engage, when you stop justifying, stop explaining, stop reacting, they panic. First, they escalate. Insults, accusations, fake apologies, guilt trips. If that fails, they play the victim. If that fails, they smear you to others. All of it is designed for one purpose: to make you break your silence, to pull you back into a cycle where they control the narrative and you lose your footing. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes more than theory. It becomes armor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Emotional disengagement is the choice not to be harmed. It's the refusal to participate in a dynamic that demands your suffering as proof of your worth. Look at Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who founded logotherapy. He endured the worst of human cruelty, yet he said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Narcissists want to rob you of that choice. Disengagement takes it back. And here's the urgency. They won't just give up. They will claw, bait, manipulate, anything to reignite the emotional bond. If you flinch, if you plead, if you fight, you restart the cycle. You teach them that you're still reachable, still moldable, still theirs. But if you stay silent, if you hold the stillness, you become unreadable, uncontrollable, untouchable. So here's the moral line you draw today. Withdraw your energy completely. Guard your reactions like sacred fire. Offer them nothing, no anger, no defense, no explanation. Because in the end, disengagement isn't about punishing them, it's about saving yourself. And it's the move they fear the most. 3, stop explaining yourself. After you set the boundary and pull back your energy, the narcissist will change tactics. They'll shift from control to confusion. They'll press you, not with rage this time, but with demands. Explain yourself. Justify yourself. Defend yourself. At first, it feels reasonable. You think, maybe if I just explain why I'm doing this, they'll understand. But here's the truth. They don't want understanding. They want access. Access to your mind, your guilt, your self-doubt. Every time you explain yourself, you offer them a map to your vulnerabilities. Every defense becomes a weapon they will use later. Every clarification is ammunition for their next assault on your boundaries. You won't hear this from most people, but with a narcissist, explanations are chains. Chains disguised as dialogue. Chains disguised as fairness. Let's go deeper. Seneca warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." When you explain yourself endlessly to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you're wasting your life force. You're throwing your peace into a bottomless pit, hoping to fill something that was never yours to fix. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before she became a household name, she faced rejection after rejection. 12 publishers turned her down. Critics doubted her, dismissed her. She didn't argue with them. She didn't explain her worth to those who couldn't see it. She stayed focused, kept writing, and eventually reshaped the literary world on her own terms. Her success wasn't built on convincing others. It was built on knowing who she was, even when others didn't. You need the same resilience. Because here's the danger most don't talk about. Explaining yourself to a narcissist isn't an attempt to connect. It's an invitation to be controlled. The more you explain, the more you place your sense of self in their hands. The more you defend, the more you beg for validation they will never give you. And it's not because you're unclear. It's because their game requires you to feel wrong, even when you're right. This is where Stoicism becomes more than an idea. It becomes armor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Every time you over-explain to someone, weaponizing your words, you chip away at your self-respect. So here's your choice now. Stop handing over your worth to those who profit from confusing you. If they demand explanations, you offer none. If they twist your silence into cruelty, you stay silent anyway. If they call your boundaries selfish or immature, you remember that their opinion isn't proof, it's strategy. The urgency is real. Every unnecessary explanation you give is a breadcrumb back to captivity. Every argument you entertain is an open door to manipulation. So you draw the line now. I do not owe explanations for my peace. I do not justify my boundaries to those who seek to break them. I do not argue with anyone committed to misunderstanding me. You stand. Quiet, clear, unavailable. Because real communication requires mutual respect. And if respect isn't there, neither should you be. 4. Let the collapse happen. You've set your boundary. You've withdrawn your emotional energy. You've stopped explaining yourself. Now the final move, you let the collapse happen. This is the part most people aren't prepared for. When you pull your energy away from a narcissist, you trigger a collapse, not just of the relationship, but of the false identity they've spent years, sometimes a lifetime, building. They don't just lose access to you. They lose the mirror that propped up their ego. Without you, they're forced to face something unbearable, themselves. At first, they'll act like it doesn't matter. They'll posture, pretend indifference, maybe even flaunt a new supply to make it seem like they've already moved on. But underneath the surface, the cracks are widening. The panic is setting in. Narcissists cannot survive emotionally without control. And when control slips through their fingers, collapse is inevitable. You won't hear this from most people, but your absence, the silence you maintain, is more powerful than any argument, any confrontation, any carefully crafted explanation. Your withdrawal forces them to sit in the emptiness they've spent a lifetime running from. Let's go deeper. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." This is your call now. You don't explain your worth. You don't negotiate your boundaries. You live them, quietly, firmly, without apology. You stop being available for the drama. You stop rescuing them from the emotional consequences of their own choices. Look at Muhammad Ali, not just the fighter, but the man. When the US government stripped him of his heavyweight title for refusing the draft, they expected him to fold, to beg, to justify. Instead, he stood still. He accepted the collapse of his career, his reputation, his finances, because he refused to betray his principles. Ali showed the world what it means to let a false structure fall, even when it costs everything. Because some things are worth more than comfort, dignity, self-respect, sovereignty. You are facing a similar test now. The narcissist's collapse will not be clean. They will rage. They will play the victim. They will invent new stories to frame you as cruel, cold, and heartless. And every part of your empathic heart will be tempted to step back in, to explain, to fix, to soften the landing. But here's the warning you need to hear. The moment you try to rescue them from their collapse, you re-enter the trap. You teach them that panic works. You teach them that cruelty works. You teach them that all they have to do is break things louder, and you'll come back to fix them. So you stand your ground. You watch the collapse from a distance. You let what must fall, fall. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Their collapse is not your obstacle. It is your doorway. The collapse is the natural consequence of reclaiming your soul from someone who was never meant to hold it. And when the dust finally settles, you will still be standing. Not bitter, not broken, but free. Here's the moral line you draw now. I do not rescue people from the consequences of their manipulation. I do not rebuild illusions that were constructed to enslave me. I let the false things fall and I rise. Because in the end, survival is not about fighting every battle. Sometimes it's about refusing to carry what was never yours to fix. You cannot fix someone who thrives on breaking you. You cannot heal in a place where you're forced to shrink just to survive. You owe no one your suffering. The boundary you set, the silence you hold, the collapse you allow, it's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the beginning of the life they told you you didn't deserve. Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you stay in chaos, you become chaos. If you choose peace, you become peace. So choose. Choose the boundary, choose the silence, choose the freedom. And when the world accuses you of being cold, remember, they only say that because they cannot control you anymore. Protect your energy, defend your dignity, walk away and don't look back. If this message found you when you needed it, subscribe for more. You're not alone in this fight, and you're stronger than you've been led to believe.